The story of Jenny and Sumit has always been one of the most polarizing in the 90 Day Fiancé universe. It's a narrative built on a foundation of deception. A shocking lie that somehow against all odds blossomed into what we were told was true love. We all remember the moment the truth came out. Sumit, the young man from India, wasn't Michael Jones, the handsome English gentleman from his profile. He was a catfish. It was a staggering betrayal. Yet Jenny forgave him. For a decade, we've watched them fight his family, his culture, and their own past to be together. We've seen the tears, the heartbreak, and the eventual triumph of their wedding. We accepted the story that Sumit made a foolish, desperate mistake in his vows, but that the love he found with Jenny was real, the one beautiful accident that came from a pathetic lie. But what if that's not the story at all? What if the original lie wasn't a mistake, but a profession? What if the love story we've been watching for years is actually the cover-up for a crime? An explosive report has just been broken by a team of investigative journalists, and it's based on the testimony of a whistleblower, a man who claims to have worked with Sumit Singh. And according to him, Michael Jones was not a one-off persona. It was an asset, an alias in an organized professional catfishing ring runs out of a New Delhi call center designed to defraud lonely Westerners out of their life savings. According to his report, Jenny wasn't his one true love. She was just the one mark he couldn't get rid of. If your mind is already spinning and you, like me, feel like everything you thought you knew about this story is about to be turned upside down, then you need to do 3 things for me right now. Hit that like button, subscribe to the Tell All Tapes, and ring that notification bell because we are about to go down a rabbit hole so deep it might just change the way you see 90 Day Fiancé forever. This is not just gossip. This is an alleged criminal conspiracy, and we have all the gut-wrenching details. The story begins not on a reality TV set, but in the flickering fluorescent light of a true crime documentary. The documentary, titled Digital Ghosts. The Guru Graham Connection was a deep dive into the sophisticated call center scams that have plagued Western countries for years. It detailed how these operations had evolved from simple tech support scams into complex, emotionally devastating romance rackets. A man sitting in his small apartment in Nida watched it. Let's call him Rohan, the pseudonym he's using to protect himself from his former employers. As the documentary detailed the psychological tactics, the scripting, and the grooming process used by these professional catfish, a cold sweat trickled down Rohan's spine. He wasn't just watching a documentary. He was watching a replay of his life. He recognized the playbook. He recognized the methodology, because a decade ago he was one of them. And so, he claims with Sumit Singh. Rohan told journalists that seeing Sumit and Jenny's faces flash across his television screen on 90 Day Fiancé over the years had been a source of private torment for him. He saw a man he knew as a quiet, calculating colleague, now playing the part of a lovelorn romantic hero. He saw a woman, Jenny, who was supposed to be a target, a nightingale, as they called them in the office, now being presented to the world as a soulmate. The guilt, he said, was a constant, dull ache. The documentary was the final push. He realized that by staying silent, he was complicit in a lie far grander than anyone could possibly imagine. He decided to come forward. He reached out to an investigative journalist, Aliyah Khan, who had a reputation for untangling complex digital crimes. His first email was cryptic, simply stating, "Know the truth about the 90 Day Fiancé star Sumit Singh. Michael Jones was not his idea. It was a company profile, and Jenny was his failed assignment." Aliyah Khan was, of course, skeptical. The world of reality TV is filled with rumors and disgruntled acquaintances. But something in Rohan's tone, a mixture of fear and conviction, compelled her to arrange a secure, encrypted call over the next several hours. Rohan laid out a story so detailed and chilling that it left the seasoned journalist speechless. He described an operation run out of a nondescript office building in a dusty corner of New Delhi. It wasn't your typical sprawling call center. It was a boutique operation, maybe 30 or 40 employees, all young, fluent in English and tech-savvy. They weren't selling anything. They were selling a fantasy. The operation, internally known as Project Starlight, specialized in long-con romance scams. Their targets were almost exclusively middle-aged or older women in the US, Canada, the UK, and Australia. The company's founder, a shadowy figure known only as Mr. Gunta, believed this known only as Mr. Gupta, believed this demographic was the perfect mark. Often lonely, financially secure, and less likely to be suspicious of a man who used flowery, old-fashioned language. Rohan explained that new recruits like him and Sumit underwent a rigorous 6-week training program. They were taught how to create convincing fake profiles, how to use VPNs and burner numbers to mask their location, and most importantly, Borson, they were taught the method. This was the company's proprietary system of psychological manipulation, a step-by-step guide to making a stranger fall in love with a ghost. And part of that training involved studying the company's portfolio of pre-made field-tested personas. There was Captain Alex, the ruggedly handsome pilot who was always in a different exotic location. There was Dr. Ben, the compassionate Doctors Without Borders physician working in a war-torn country. And then there was the company's most reliable, most successful persona, Michael Jones, the lonely English engineer. According to Rohan, Michael Jones was a masterpiece of fictitious character design. The backstory was always the same. A 30-some structural engineer based in London. A widower whose wife had died tragically young. He was cultured, enjoyed poetry, classic rock, and long walks. He was portrayed as a man of substance and old-world charm. A stark contrast to the men, the targets the story you are about to hear was never meant to be told. It was never meant to leave the walls of a small office hidden behind tinted glass windows in South Delhi. It was never meant to reach television screens across America. And it was certainly never meant to unravel in front of millions of viewers who believed they were watching a love story. Because what the world saw was romance, sacrifice, and destiny. But what may have been happening behind the scenes was something far darker, far more calculated, and far more dangerous. For over a decade, audiences followed the emotional journey of an older American woman and a younger Indian man who claimed their love conquered culture, family opposition, and impossible odds. Viewers cried when they cried, celebrated when they married, defended them when critics attacked, and slowly accepted the narrative that their rocky beginning was simply the result of one foolish mistake, a fake profile, a harmless catfish that turned into real love. But what if that beginning was not an accident? What if it was not a lonely man making a desperate choice? What if it was a job assignment? This investigation began with a single encrypted email sent to an independent journalist known for exposing digital crime networks. The message was short, only one sentence, and it read, "You are watching a love story that started inside a professional scam operation." At first it sounded absurd, another conspiracy theory from the dark corners of the internet. But when the sender requested a secure call and provided internal terminology, training manuals, and names of employees that matched real business registrations, curiosity turned into concern. The whistleblower, who we will call Arjun for his protection, described a boutique call center operating under the cover of a marketing consultancy. A small team of fluent English speakers trained not in sales, but in emotional manipulation. They were not selling products. They were selling affection, hope, companionship. They were selling a carefully engineered fantasy designed to extract money over months or even years. And according to Arjun, one of their most successful personas was a widowed British engineer named Daniel Moore. Daniel Moore was not a real man. He was a script, a character developed through psychological profiling. He had a tragic backstory, refined taste in music, poetic messages prepared in templates, carefully timed voice notes recorded in neutral accents, and a digital footprint that could survive basic online searches. The persona was tested, refined, optimized, and assigned to employees who showed the highest emotional intelligence scores during training. Recruits underwent a 6-week program where they learned behavioral mirroring, trauma bonding triggers, financial escalation sequencing, and vulnerability mapping. They studied loneliness statistics in Western countries, divorce demographics, retirement savings averages, and common emotional pain points among middle-aged women. Every message was strategic, every compliment deliberate, every late-night confession designed to deepen dependency. Arjun claimed that the man audiences later saw on television once logged into an internal dashboard labeled Project Nightingale, a list of active targets color-coded by engagement level. Green meant early contact, yellow meant emotional attachment forming, red meant financial extraction phase. And according to archived screenshots he provided, one American woman remained stuck in yellow status far longer than expected. She was not responding to scripted urgency tactics. She did not send large wire transfers. She asked questions outside the script, and instead of becoming financially compliant, she became emotionally persistent. Arjun said management grew frustrated. Long con operations rely on predictable escalation, but this target wanted something else. She wanted a real meeting. Normally such requests triggered a shutdown protocol, block, disappear, recycle the persona, but this time something unusual happened. The employee assigned to Daniel Moore resisted closure. He argued during internal meetings that maintaining the relationship could open future opportunities, whether financial or otherwise, and instead of cutting ties, he continued communicating beyond company guidelines. That decision, Arjun insists, marked the moment the operation lost control of its own creation. Months turned into years. The persona was no longer just text on a screen. It began bleeding into real life. Video calls were carefully staged, excuses rehearsed, delays explained through fabricated family emergencies. But eventually the demand for physical presence became unavoidable, and according to Arjun, management approved a risky strategy: allow a controlled meeting under strict financial objectives. What they did not anticipate was emotional deviation, because somewhere between scripted affection and strategic vulnerability, something shifted. When the couple eventually appeared on reality television years later, presenting their origin story as a simple catfishing mistake born from insecurity, Arjun says former employees watched in stunned silence. They recognized the cadence of his speech, the phrasing patterns from training modules, even certain romantic lines lifted almost word for word from internal scripts. Lines that were never meant for cameras, lines designed to unlock bank accounts, not wedding venues. The deeper journalists dug, the more complex the story became. Corporate registrations tied to shell companies, encrypted messaging groups discussing foreign targets, performance bonuses linked to wire transfer thresholds. Yet no direct financial complaint ever surfaced publicly connected to this particular relationship, which raises the most unsettling possibility of all. Was this the one target who escaped the financial phase? Or was the extraction simply hidden within layers of personal gifts, travel expenses, and private transfers disguised as love? Arjun described guilt that built slowly over years as he watched interviews portraying the relationship as destiny. He claims employees joked internally when early episodes aired, calling it the greatest accidental advertisement the industry had ever received, proof that even exposure could be flipped into a redemption arc, because once audiences accepted the narrative of transformation, suspicion dissolved. But guilt has a way of resurfacing when silence becomes complicity, and after leaving the operation due to payment disputes and increasing law enforcement pressure on similar call centers, Arjun decided to preserve chat logs, internal presentations, and payment spreadsheets before walking away. He says he never intended to expose anyone publicly until he saw vulnerable viewers online defending the relationship as evidence that catfishing can lead to fairy tales, a message he believes could endanger lonely individuals who mistake manipulation for romance. As this story unfolds, we must be clear, these are allegations from a single whistleblower supported by documents still undergoing verification. Yet the patterns he describes align disturbingly with documented romance scam methodologies reported by cybercrime units worldwide. Long-term grooming, isolation from skeptical friends, urgency narratives involving visas, business investments, or medical crises, emotional volatility alternating with reassurance, a cycle designed to destabilize critical thinking. The question is not whether romance scams exist. They do, costing victims billions annually. The question is whether one of reality television's most talked about couples began inside such a system and evolved into something else, something unscripted and unpredictable. Did an employee assigned to manipulate accidentally fall in love with his assignment? Or did a skilled operator simply adapt when circumstances changed, turning potential exposure into opportunity? Investigators continue analyzing metadata from archived emails allegedly connected to the Daniel Moore persona, examining IP routing inconsistencies, timestamp clusters aligning with known call center shifts, and linguistic fingerprinting comparing televised confessionals to archived training scripts. Early findings suggest overlap in phrasing frequency patterns, though correlation does not confirm intent. Meanwhile, the couple at the center of the storm has publicly maintained that their beginning was a youthful mistake followed by genuine remorse and growth, a narrative millions have accepted. But if Arjun's testimony proves accurate, then the origin story may not be one of insecurity, but of infrastructure. Not a lonely man improvising online, but a structured enterprise deploying assets. And here is where the rabbit hole deepens, because project account is true. There may be other stories still hidden, other targets who never made it to television, other employees who never broke ranks. Tonight we are not delivering a verdict. We are presenting a possibility backed by emerging testimony, digital breadcrumbs, and patterns too consistent to ignore. And as we move into the next phase of this investigation, we will examine financial records, interview cybercrime analysts, and dissect the psychological architecture of long-con romance operations to determine whether this alleged love story was destiny, deception, or something disturbingly in between. If what Arjun says is true, then the greatest twist is not that a catfish became a husband, but that a professional persona escaped the system that created him, and that the world applauded without ever seeing the machinery behind the curtain. This is only the beginning, because in the next chapter we will reveal the training manual excerpts, the escalation ladder used to transition from affection to asset transfer, and the internal conflict that allegedly erupted when emotions compromised profit. And trust me when I say the documents we are about to examine may change the way you view every digital love story. Forever, the story you are about to hear was never meant to leave the walls of a dimly lit office hidden above a travel agency. In South Delhi, it was never meant to cross oceans, and it was certainly never meant to collide with primetime television, because what millions believed was a controversial love story may have started as something far more calculated. For years, viewers followed the emotional roller coaster of an older American woman and a younger foreign man whose relationship began with a fake identity. Audiences were shocked when the truth surfaced. They were furious at the deception. Yet somehow they stayed, because betrayal turned into forgiveness, scandal turned into sacrifice. And eventually the couple stood at a wedding altar, proving that love could survive even the ugliest beginning. But what if the beginning was not a mistake? What if it was a method? The first crack in the fairy tale appeared in an encrypted email sent to an investigative journalist known for exposing cybercrime syndicates. The message was only one sentence long, and it read, "The romance you are celebrating began as a performance inside a professional operation." At first it sounded like internet noise, another anonymous attempt to rewrite a reality TV narrative, but attached to the email were fragments of internal training slides, employee code names, and transaction flow charts that suggested something more structured than a lonely man creating a fake profile out of insecurity. The whistleblower, who we will call R, claimed he once worked inside a boutique digital engagement firm that specialized in long-term emotional manipulation, not quick scams, not crude phishing emails, but carefully engineered romance arcs designed to build trust over months before introducing financial dependency. According to R, the company referred to its targets as nightingales, individuals identified through demographic filtering as emotionally vulnerable but financially stable, often divorced, widowed, or socially isolated, primarily located in North America and Europe. Recruits underwent 6 weeks of psychological conditioning where they were trained in conversational mirroring, attachment pacing, vulnerability triggers, and narrative continuity. Every persona was pre-built, tested, and optimized, complete with backstories, curated photo libraries, time zone-aligned response schedules, and scripted escalation ladders. One of the firm's most successful characters was a widowed British engineer named Daniel Hart, refined, poetic, emotionally wounded yet resilient, a man who loved classic rock and wrote long reflective messages about destiny and second chances, a character specifically designed to contrast with the chaotic dating experiences many middle-aged women reported online. R alleges that the man later seen on television portraying himself as a reformed catfish had once logged into an internal dashboard labeled Project Nightfall, where active conversations were color-coded by emotional progression, green for introduction, amber for bonding, crimson for financial transition. Most nightingales move predictably through the stages, but one profile stalled in amber for months. She resisted urgency tactics. She questioned inconsistencies. She expressed a desire for in-person commitment rather than financial sacrifice. According to our management, recommended termination of the interaction to avoid exposure risk. But the assigned operator argued against it, claiming long-term emotional investment could produce alternative returns, whether monetary or reputational. That decision marked a deviation from protocol, because in professional manipulation environments, predictability equals profit, and unpredictability equals danger. Over time, what began as scripted affection allegedly blurred into unscripted attachment. Video calls were arranged with controlled lighting, voice modulation practiced to maintain accent consistency, delays explained through fictional family obligations, yet the nightingale remained persistent, demanding authenticity. Eventually, says our leadership approved a supervised meeting under strict behavioral guidelines, a move rarely permitted due to legal exposure concerns. What happened next remains the central mystery, because instead of collapsing under scrutiny, the relationship transformed into a public narrative of redemption. The operator confessed to deception on camera, framing it as youthful insecurity. The woman forgave him. Audiences embraced the arc, and what could have been the end of a failed assignment became the beginning of a televised love saga. Former employees allegedly watched the episodes in stunned disbelief, recognizing phrasing patterns lifted directly from training modules, romantic metaphors identical to template scripts, emotional beats timed with the precision of practice storytelling. Yet no formal financial complaint ever surfaced publicly connecting the woman to a monetary loss, raising a complicated question. Did the assignment fail financially but succeed emotionally? Or was the extraction simply reclassified under the banner of shared expenses and international relocation costs? As journalists began verifying R's claims, they discovered shell registrations tied to digital consulting firms operating in overlapping districts, employee turnover matching the timeline described, and archived online job postings seeking candidates with strong emotional intelligence and Western cultural fluency. None of this proves criminal conspiracy, but it constructs a pattern too intricate to dismiss casually. Meanwhile, the couple at the center of the controversy has consistently maintained that their origin story was a personal mistake followed by genuine love, and millions believe them. Because redemption is a powerful narrative and audiences crave transformation more than scandal. Yet experts in cyberpsychology warn that long-con romance operations often rely on redemption arcs to neutralize suspicion, presenting vulnerability as proof of sincerity. The deeper we explore Project Nightfall, the more unsettling the structure appears. Internal documents outline a three-phase dependency cycle beginning with emotional exclusivity, transitioning into crisis simulation, and culminating in resource transfer justification, whether through investment opportunities, emergency travel, or shared future planning. If R's testimony holds even partial truth, then the story broadcast worldwide may represent an unprecedented crossover between digital manipulation infrastructure and reality entertainment, not necessarily proof of ongoing fraud, but evidence that the line between performance and authenticity may have been blurred long before cameras arrived. Tonight we are not declaring guilt, we are presenting testimony, digital traces, and expert analysis, because in the age of curated identities, the difference between catfish and character actor can become dangerously thin. In the next chapter, we will dissect the alleged training manual excerpts, examine psychological profiling techniques used to accelerate attachment, and analyze whether emotional deviation can genuinely occur inside structured manipulation environments. Because if love did emerge from deception, then the real question is not whether it began as a job, but whether the operator ever truly stopped performing. This investigation is only beginning, and what we uncover next may challenge everything you believe about online romance, reality television, and the stories we choose to trust. If Project Nightfall was real, then its power did not come from technology alone. It came from psychology, because according to the Whistleblower, are the true product being sold inside that quiet South Delhi office was not romance. It was emotional architecture, a system engineered to build attachment step by step until the target could no longer distinguish between instinct and influence. The training manual he described was divided into modules, each one designed to reshape how recruits thought about human connection, Module 1 was called Reflection, and it focused on conversational mirroring. Trainees were taught to subtly match vocabulary, pacing, and emotional tone. If a nightingale used poetic language, the operator would respond with lyrical intensity. If she preferred practical discussion, the persona would pivot to grounded stability. The goal was synchronization, because people trust those who feel familiar. Module 2 was Attachment Acceleration, a calculated roadmap of vulnerability disclosure. Recruits were instructed to share minor personal hardships first, building sympathy without triggering skepticism, then gradually escalate to deeper emotional confessions, childhood loneliness, betrayal by past partners, fear of aging alone. Each revelation timed precisely after the nightingale shared something similar, creating the illusion of parallel destiny. Module 3 was Crisis Engineering, perhaps the most controversial component described by R. This phase allegedly introduced controlled tension into the narrative, travel complications, unexpected medical bills, frozen bank accounts, investment delays, each crisis carefully calibrated to test financial willingness without overwhelming the target. If resistance appeared, the persona would retreat into reassurance, emphasizing love over money, strengthening trust before attempting escalation. Again, but here is where the anomaly occurred, because the nightingale assigned to Daniel Hart did not follow expected behavioral models. Instead of responding to crisis cues with financial offers, she responded with logistical solutions. Suggesting alternative plans that did not require transfers, she questioned inconsistencies in timelines she insisted on.